And welcome back to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. A plethora, is that
plethora
word?
is a good word.
A plethora of stuff to talk about today. Some fun, some a little more serious. Pop Culture Thursday. Dive into Halloween a little bit. We have a really neat story about a zookeeper and a crane. We're going to talk about Kyrie Irving. We're going to talk about Brian Laundrie, Elon Musk, Game of Thrones trailer. A little bit of everything that we're going to dive into. But before we get to it, Mark, how are you feeling today?
I don't know why it hit me because I was watching something else. We need to get you a background.
So this is my idea, because you and I have had this debate about A-listers and stuff like that. I think what I'm going to start doing is when I think someone is an A-lister, we're going to print their picture and put it behind me. The A-list club is going to be behind me. I think that's what we're going to do.
And there's only going to be like 2 people on your A-list.
There will be more than 2. But here's the thing. It will fluctuate. Like, people will come off the list. People will join the list. Like, it's not just going to be this thing where once you're on the A-list, you're on it. Like, it has to change. The difference is you would have said someone was an A-lister when you were 18, and they'd still be up on the wall behind you. That's the difference.
People go hot and cold. But Madonna is still an A-lister. Magic Johnson is at the Dodger game last night.
People would recognize
and Magic Johnson is an A-list.
People would recognize.
You don't think people recognize Madonna?
I think your son, if Magic Johnson walked by, he'd be like, "Oh my God, that's Magic Johnson."
Well, because he's 6'9", and he looks like he did before.
I think if Madonna walked by your son, he'd be like, "I have no clue who that is."
And I'll bet he couldn't name Madonna's song, but he's 14. That's not the point.
He knows Magic Johnson.
I hope, but he's a sports fan.
He does.
There's a lot of 14-year-old dudes walking through high schools that have no idea who Magic Johnson is.
That's fine. There's more walking through those halls that don't know who Madonna is. Without a doubt.
I think I'm disagreeing with that. But anyway, back to your question of how I'm doing.
Wait, real quick. Do you not like that idea? You don't seem thrilled about that idea.
No, I actually do, because it'll show how you're so elitist with your A-list.
Elitist. That's okay. You know what? You are right. I am elitist with my A-list.
Like, I can only imagine when you get married, there's going to be 15 people invited on your side, and 12 of them are going to be relatives.
Oh, that's not possible.
Because you have, just not worthy of it.
I feel very, very fortunate. I don't know how I'm going to decide a wedding party. I feel very fortunate in that way. Is a dozen too many for your wedding party?
I had 10.
You had 10? So there you go. So maybe a dozen isn't too many.
I said to my ex at the time, and I rattled off, I was like, when the logistics, you propose and you're like, she's like, yeah. And these are the first couple things. These are the first 2 things out of my mouth after we got past the "we marry me," yes.
Yeah.
I was like, number one, because my brother was still an active baseball player at the time. We're like, we have to get married in the winter. So we're going through, in Pennsylvania, January and December are bad weather months. Do we want to do it? But January, there's nothing going on in the world.
Sure.
So do we want to risk the weather? Do we want to go into November and make a difference? So we decided she wanted to have no weather issues, so we wanted to go into November. And I said to her, Penn State plays Michigan at home. Let me find a Penn State schedule, because if we schedule our wedding date the same day that Penn State plays Michigan at home, half the people there are going to be pissed, or they're just not going to come.
Right.
And the second thing I said is, I was like, this is probably going to be a problem, but I'm like,
start counting.
I was like, I have 9 people that I need to have in my wedding party. And she said, did you count my brother? And I said, I have 10 people that I need to have in my wedding party.
That's pretty good. It was early on when I first started dating my girlfriend. It's a good way to really figure out which friends, who are your actual best friends. And so she's meeting people early in the relationship, and there's this person, that person. And so the question came up, she's like, who's your best man? Like, if you get married, who's your best man? And then it kind of, who's your wedding party, and kind of going through. And originally I said,
and you should have said, well, you'll find out when you get invited to my wedding.
There you go. Yes, I should have said that. So one of the things that came up, I said, honestly, I think I have like a dozen. And she's like, you don't have a dozen. And so I started railing off names, and I got to a dozen, and I just looked at her and I'm like, so who are you going to take off? And she just looked back at me and she's like, yeah, you have a dozen. Because once you start listing the names, like if you have 3, if you have 5, whatever the number is, once you list them off, the question becomes, who are you removing? It's not so much do you have too many, it's can you afford to take one off?
Well, you should have a test of skills and tell people that they qualify.
Like a Squid Games on Netflix.
Have a little decathlon of events.
Have you watched Squid Games on Netflix?
No.
I'm sure you haven't. It's a Korean show, and they play kid games, like playground games. And if you don't make it, they kill you. And so the winner at the end of it gets a lot of money. But the games they're playing, they're like red light, green light,
Foursquare, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like very.
Did they play
like
Foursquare when you were a kid? Do you know Foursquare?
No.
Oh, it was just a stupid playground game with a ball.
Okay. Yeah, no, we never did that.
So here's what, and this is what happened, just to finish out this stupid conversation that we got to. I'd been to a college buddy's wedding of mine who did the same. He had more guys than she had, more groomsmen than she had bridesmaids.
Okay.
And what they did, and then what we stole the idea, because my wife didn't have 10 bridesmaids.
Right.
So it worked out that like you two are paired up and you two are paired up, and the other guys were like the ushers who sat people, and they brought down like the bride of the or the mother of the bride, the mother of the groom, the grandmother of the bride, the grand. So everybody had a role. They all stood up at front, but they all didn't. Like some guys walked down the aisle with a girl, and some guys walked down the aisle with like the mother of the bride,
right?
And the mother. So that's how we.
I feel like you just described to me how weddings work.
But usually,
isn't that what people do?
But no, usually it's the exact number.
Well, you have groomsmen and you have ushers, and then if you have too many groomsmen, essentially the back end of your groomsmen become ushers.
Oh, see, I've only ever been.
I thought that was protocol.
I've only ever been at 2 weddings where the numbers didn't match.
I thought you were just going to say I've only ever been at 2 weddings.
Oh, unfortunately, no.
I know. I was going to say you've probably been to.
There have been more than 2.
Halloween's coming up. You had mentioned in an earlier show, and I thought today would be a good day to talk about this because we're getting in October.
I will tell you this, and I don't mean to cut you off because I just had like 2 summers ago was the first time I went to a wedding of friend or whatever, and I was at their parents' wedding. Okay. These kids were they were 20, the early 20s.
So you felt old.
And I was like, and what's weird, just the small world of Montoursville, I was invited because I was a friend of the bride's dad.
Yeah.
But when I was young, I was at the groom's dad's parents' wedding, and they're still together.
And you felt old.
That's one of the first times I was like, good God, I was there when they got married. Now their kid's getting married. It wasn't even their oldest kid.
Yeah.
So yes, that hit home.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That was a shock to the system.
That one was a jolt.
Yes.
Halloween's coming up. You had mentioned before, how can somebody not like Halloween? So I thought on Pop Culture Thursday, this might be a good one to bring up or to talk about because I am here to.
You like it, right?
It is my least. It's probably Is it a holiday? It's not a technical holiday.
No, it's not a holiday. It's an event-ish.
But when you round up like the days of the year, so when you talk about like the big ones, New Year's and Christmas and Thanksgiving and Valentine's, all that stuff, Halloween might be my least favorite.
Really?
I just don't. So it's this.
And not to cut you off, you love fall.
I do. I love fall. I love the weather of fall. Like you talked about the rhythm of fall, getting back into it. There is something about Halloween that even when I was younger, I hated getting dressed up. I didn't like asking I didn't like knocking on strangers' doors for candy. I hate scary movies. There's not a lot about Halloween that I get like gun-ho about.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan.
Every little kid
Yep.
likes getting in a costume.
No, I hated
it. Which just makes you odd.
Second
of all, in Blossburg, there are no strangers. So it's just like going to the other neighbor's house and asking for free stuff.
That's true to a certain extent because when you're still younger, they're strangers. Like when you're young, everyone's a stranger technically. There's like 10 people. When you're like 6, 10 people in your life are strangers, and then everybody else is just in your world. Like they're all. Yeah.
This is one of the stupid, funny and I'll tell you what's different about, I'm 49 years old. When I was a kid on Halloween, we didn't have parents take us around. Yeah. We just went.
Right.
And the parents, every now and then you'd come check in, and you'd dump your stuff and you go back. And that's, when you live in a little borough like Montoursville, that's what we did. So one year it was me and my brother and our neighbor girl. We had a neighbor girl named Kevin.
Yep.
which is, she's the only girl. Her name was Mary Kevin, and I don't know where they got it, but everyone just called her Kevin. And but anyway, so we were all out, and she was a mummy.
Okay.
So as we're walking down the street, she just keeps unraveling.
Okay.
Because I don't know what she was wrapped in. I guess it would have been like the equivalent of a white Ace bandage.
Okay.
And she's just walking. She's like 11. She's like, this sucks.
Right.
So she goes, and they had a backup costume in case, because they didn't know how this was going to work.
Sure.
So she's like, I'm going to run home and change. So then she comes back, and we see this kid coming, but we had no idea, because now it's a person in a new costume.
Right.
And I can remember, we're like, is that her? And she's like looking, and because she's a little kid, she goes, I didn't remember what you guys were dressed up as.
Right.
So we're looking at each other from across the street. We like want to yell. We don't want to yell so anyway, that's one of my childhood Halloween memories of the mummy who's coming unraveled walking down the street.
That's pretty good.
And I think, to carry on, I've always said when I'm president, which what's Yang's party?
The Forward Party.
When I'm the Forward Party, one of the things that I'm going to do, one of the immediate things of my platform that needs change to help the country, is Halloween is going to be moved up to September 30th.
As I was going to say, it's too cold.
It's too cold. You get these kids when they go to school, and you got the 8-year-old girl who's dressed like a princess and it looks great. Now the princess has this jacket over top, or they have like long underwear underneath, and they're all bundled.
It helps with the Superman costume because you put it under, and then you put the
But
rest
mostly
over.
you get so cumbersome because it's freezing.
Yes.
It is dumb.
This is the other part too. I've come to appreciate scary movies more now than I did then.
Because you wear your big boy pants.
I wear my big boy pants. But there's just, so for me, when you start like checking boxes, I don't have a lot of boxes checked for loving Halloween. It's just not there for me. It's not a thing.
Back to the cold. You know where it first hit me, where like Halloween doesn't have to be cold, was watching E.T.
Because it's West Coast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's California or wherever. And I'm like, oh my God, they have Halloween. It's 80 degrees.
Yeah.
Wouldn't Halloween be better if it was 80 degrees?
Maybe it depends on the
80.
costume.
Maybe not.
Depends
80.
on the costume.
Yeah, if you're the Wolf Man, you are sweating like a.
Sure. Did you have a favorite costume? I was an Eminem one year. I was one of the.
You were Eminem or a Eminem?
I was.
You weren't
Eminem.
the rapper.
No, I was Eminem.
Okay.
I was the Blues Brothers one year. I'm trying to think what else I was. I think I was a Ninja Turtle one year. I just never loved it. Like, I just was never excited to like be something or like have a costume. It wasn't. I don't know.
No, I'm trying to remember. I don't know if I ever had a great one either.
Okay. Were you basics? Like, were you a ghost? Were you like, what did you go as?
But see, this is the thing. We stopped at like 12. When you get to that age where it's not cool anymore, and I think until you kind of become an adult again, it's cool now. As an adult, Halloween party's cool. So I don't even remember my costumes back when I was, when I did our Kiss Christmas card that I did with my kids. My first connotation of it is we could do it for Halloween.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, who's going to see it? It's dark.
Right.
I mean, even if you're out and about, it's dark when you're walking down the street, because that's another reason we're going to move it to September so people can see. You know how many, it is far and away the most kids get hit by cars on Halloween. Far and away.
I would guess. I mean, I don't have the stats, obviously. But
it is so dangerous.
Yeah.
Because, and not only because it's dark and they're excited and they're young and they just want to, but a lot of the stuff they can't see, depending on what they have on their head. They have no peripheral vision, and driving. I don't know if I've ever been, I shouldn't say ever been so nervous, because we've all been in snowstorms and stuff. Sure. But if you ever have to drive around like a community, and when my kids were little, when your kids are really little and you get them dressed up, you don't go door to door. Sure. You're like, we're going to their house, we're going to Grammy's house, we're going to and you pick a couple stops. And then the kids have hit 6 or 7 and they're done with it because they're like, but when you're driving around on Halloween, it is like 10 and 2 and you are focused. That's a bad night.
Do you have a favorite scary movie? Do you have like a favorite character or movie or something that stands out to you?
I remember the first time I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, I thought it was shockingly good. I thought it was going to be corny. Right. I've watched it again lately. It's less good. At the time it was. I bought Blair Witch to watch it again because I saw it way back when, and now I can't find what I did with it.
Yeah.
But I thought Blair Witch was really clever. It doesn't go into the Jaws is one of my favorite movies ever, and it's scary. It's not Halloween-ish scary. But I'm pumped to see the new Halloween movie with Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers.
The trailer came up on my feed the other day for like the first time. So I'm with you on that one. We're actually going to see across the street from us, or this way, across the street from us, we are going to see Young Frankenstein.
I might go see that too.
Of it. We're going to see it. I think I've told you this before.
You love it.
Older classic Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks movie. It is one of my favorite, but it's not scary necessarily. It's just Halloween themed because it's Frankenstein. But I've always had the Frankenstein, like the stories, the actual book itself. I've always enjoyed Frankenstein more than any other scary Halloween character or anything. You know what? Like, people are really into vampires. I've never understood it.
Dude, did you watch any of the Twilight?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This is one of the I said, and I say this with all due respect, when women question why men think women are crazy, and then they watch Twilight, or they read Twilight, and they love it. And I say to them, this is the difference between men and women. I don't care how hot she is. If her survival is based on sucking human blood and killing you, then you're going to go find another girl to date. It's just not, no matter how hot she is, it's just not worth it. My life is not worth being with someone who has to kill people to stay alive.
But she's in love.
But from the women's side, they're like, and I've had educated adult women say to me, but if you would have read the books, the love that they had.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't care about the love. She is going to get killed. Oh no, not her, because he loves her so much. And you're just like, oh dear God.
That's why she's in love, and you're.
And I'm single?
And you're single.
Apparently. But you know what? Also, I'm not in danger.
not as often.
Could you imagine really going home and like, how often do people fight? Even the happiest couple. Like, knowing that if you fall asleep first, she's so mad she could just end it. Teeth in your neck and you're done.
Obviously, you're suspending reality when you read those books. Like, you're not reading it with the critical eye as someone as renowned as you.
I am.
I know you are. But even like there was True Blood on HBO,
right?
Even like the older movies, like I don't know, the vampire aspect does nothing for me, and it's a real genre. Like vampire is a genre onto itself that dominates, and I've never understood it.
I thought the love affair between Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah, the mermaid, is more. I would rather date a mermaid than a vampire.
I've always enjoyed this is really bad. I always thought there should be more mummy movies. Like the original The Mummies. You didn't like those with Brendan Fraser?
I've never seen them.
They're okay, so they are enjoyable. I'm not going to sit here and say they're great.
I pictured like Indiana Jones-ish.
They're very enjoyable. Now Tom Cruise just like redid one 4 years ago. It was pretty bad. But the original like mummy movies are pretty great. But there's something like there's an Indiana Jones aspect to mummies because like tombs and burials and you're excavating and you're going down in and you're exploring. There's a whole storyline to that I find way more fascinating with mummies than anything with vampires. I don't, but it's, it's so underplayed compared to vampires. So I don't know. I never understood that aspect of it.
Yeah, I get it. But just the darkness, the mystery, the creativity of it. There's one of my favorite quotes from Bruce Springsteen. One of my favorite quotes was from Bruce Springsteen. He said, "The darkness is always more interesting than the light."
Yeah.
Except in this room because I like it when it's light. And you like when it's dark. But so yeah, you are one of the few people I know that doesn't like, except for people who are just afraid of their own shadow.
Okay.
They don't like Halloween.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of it. Joe says The Fog. Is The Fog?
I've never seen The Fog.
Is The Fog the Stephen King? The Mist Is it similar, The Fog and the Mist? Did they just rename it for the movie?
I don't know.
Maybe Joe will tell us if he's still listening. Have you ever seen The Mist with Stephen King?
I have not.
I have. I'll tell you what. I have read a couple of Stephen King books. I've enjoyed all of them, which is bizarre. I had a student when I was first teaching in Blossburg, and she was an 8th grader, and she had read almost all of Stephen King's works.
And she was in counseling.
Grade. No, she was incredibly gifted. She was very, very bright, and and Stephen King's great. Like, I hate scary movies, and Stephen King is so good that when I read a Stephen King book, I'm like, this is phenomenal.
I'm trying to think. I saw it. I thought it was okay. I've seen some of the old ones. What was the car? Was it Carrie? Or was Carrie not the car?
Carrie
Christine was the car, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. Carrie was the high school.
I saw Carrie. I saw Christine. I saw The Shining.
Okay.
I thought that was clever. I'm more than the slasher, whatever. I like ones like Sixth Sense. Okay. The suspenseful.
You like the suspenseful thriller. Here's and I've said this before, like the one that I am out on. Like I don't mind like the spook, the thriller, whatever it is. The one like torture, I'm out on. If there is somebody being tortured, get me away from the screen. Yeah, I don't want to be in the theater. Like the Hostels, the Saws, like all of those. Like I'm good. Like I don't need any of that.
No, I'm with you. I'll tell you one. I thought Pet Sematary was good.
Okay.
That was Stephen King.
Yep,
book,
that's
right?
Stephen King. They just redid it. Is that the one you're referring to?
I don't know. I saw it a long time ago.
They just redid it like a year ago, maybe 2. I think it was a pandemic release when it came out.
You know what I do love about scary movies? That commercial where it's like, why don't we get in the running car? And he's like, no, let's hide behind the chainsaw.
That one's pretty good.
And the guy shaking his head.
The last one for me. Are you in or out on zombies?
You know what's funny?
The last one I had written down.
You know what's funny? I think in general, the zombie genre is dumb.
Okay.
But I love Zombieland and Zombieland 2.
Yeah.
They are so... I didn't see Zombieland, the first one, until recently. And they made a second one. It's like, well, the first one has to be good. It has Woody Harrelson. It has like people that I liked. And I laughed and laughed. It's not the taste, it's the texture. Like I could watch those over and over. Yeah. You kill Bill Murray.
They do kill Bill Murray. Zombies for me, I'm like all in on zombies, but this is why. I think it has more to do with the post-apocalyptic. I like the world. Like I've told you before, I love apocalyptic movies.
I do not.
So the zombie genre feeds right into that.
Even though I like Pet Sematary, and that's kind of zombie-ish.
It is a little zombie-ish. You might be into it more than you even realize yourself. What do you want to do?
Don't like. Here's what I don't like. And I don't like in the superhero movies. You know the worst part of superhero movies? They punch each other. Okay. The guy gets back up. They hit him with a sledgehammer. The guy gets back up. A building falls on him. They get back up. And you get this whole aspect, like, you can't kill the enemy.
Sure.
So what good is it fighting? Sure. Like, if a building just fell on the villain and he got up, what good is punching him in the face? Okay. Like, that I can't get. So when you get this zombie that's why one of the things I loved about Zombieland, you have seen Zombieland, correct? How what's his name broke them all down, and there was the Terminator or whatever, the ones that I just thought it was so cleverly done.
Well, I guess that's part of it. So like The Walking Dead and different aspects of zombie life is the idea of like the world is it worth fighting for a world that's never going to return to normal? Like the world's never going back to what it was.
Are you talking COVID now or are you talking about?
It could be.
Oh, okay.
But the idea of like in Zombie and The Walking Dead, like it's like every week's the same thing. And it's like, that's kind of the point, is dealing with the reality that like your world is never going to be the same. And it may never end. And what is the human aspect of that? How do you continue to fight against that? Is it worth fighting against that? So the weird part is the thing that annoys you about superhero movies or zombie movies is kind of the whole point of like the post-apocalyptic like genre. Like, what are you willing to go up against and how long are you willing to do it when there is no light at the end of the tunnel?
And isn't when there's light, isn't just so much better?
I can't stand it. You want to do the crane story next?
Yes.
This story is pretty neat.
Yes.
Okay, so I told you
this story's only neat if you're not this one dude.
This one dude. So there is cranes, specifically the white-naped. I hope I'm saying
A bird, not a thing that lifts buildings.
Correct. A white-naped crane. They are endangered. You actually looked up how many?
5,000 maybe.
5,000.
And they mostly live in, what was it?
Russia.
Northern China, southern Russia, over there.
Okay. So there is a zookeeper at the Smithsonian National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute who is quote unquote dating one of these cranes. And that's not the way it sounds. His name is Chris Crow, which that's
that's
for a pun.
That is almost comic bookish right there.
For the past 14 years, he has been, in quotes, in a relationship with one crane by the name of Walnut, which is also fantastic as well. Multiple zoos had trouble finding a suitable mate for Walnut the crane in order to reproduce. She was sent to the Smithsonian because they do artificial insemination, and that's when their bond began. They both came there the same year in 2004. As I assigned to be the primary crane keeper, 5 out of every 7 days, I would take care of her every day. Walnut started doing the traditional mating acts, dances, however you want to refer to them.
Walnut started hitting on the zookeeper.
Walnut started hitting on the zookeeper instead of the other cranes that were in the pen next to him, because they put them next to 2 different pens. They hope they start to interact, and then when it's time to mate, they let them into the same pen.
Because the zookeeper fed Walnut.
Yes.
So Walnut's like, I like this person better than all these other people.
Yes. So what has happened and what they've realized, they also don't know this for sure. They are pretty sure that in other opportunities Walnut has had to mate with cranes, she has actually ended up killing the other male crane.
Much like a vampire.
I don't know about that aspect. But so what they've decided is when you have an endangered species, the 2 worst things are a female who won't procreate
and a female who kills the dude who you won't procreate with.
Yes. So what they decided to try to do was, since she was performing these tasks in front of Chris, they decided that if Chris pretended to be the crane and they artificially inseminated Walnut, they could produce eggs that they could then give to another crane couple that would raise the cranes, but Chris and Walnut would have fake eggs and they would pretend to bring the eggs to term. And they have been doing this now for 14 years successfully. And every day that Chris shows up to work, he basically is going to see his girlfriend, Walnut.
It is so bizarre.
It is. Can you imagine being Chris?
Is this dude married to a human?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Please say yes.
I don't know.
You imagine? So now I'm at, what is like the mating dance that he does with this crane every day?
I'm not sure.
Did you ever see? This goes to a normal story from the bizarre one. When they put these racehorses out to stud,
mm-hmm.
and they come in and
they'll pull the okey doke on them.
They'll pay $50,000 a time, and like these stud horses are bringing it like multiple times a day.
Sure.
Well, they have another horse that's called a fluffer or something.
Yeah.
To get the horse wound up. Then they bring him in. So imagine that job. Imagine you're the fluffer horse. So all your job is foreplay. And then, like, now you got everything going, and they're like, okay, you're out.
Are you referring to Chris as a fluffer crane?
Yes, he is the fluffer.
He's the fluffer
crane. Now, I hope, in his world, like, if you're a horse and you're, warming up the other horse, you would like to finish the job. Right. I'm hoping Chris doesn't want to finish the job with, what kind of crane we got here?
A white-naped?
A white-naped crane. I'm hoping that he doesn't, but you never know.
Yes. So when this was first reported, Walnut was 36, Chris was 42. White-naped cranes live to be about 60 and they mate for life. So here's the other aspect of it too, is this isn't like if you remove the animal and you put it somewhere else or like they'll find another mate. They mate with the same crane for life. So once this crane decided that Chris was the mate, that's their only option in order to get this female to let her be artificially inseminated.
And
So there's an attachment aspect to this too, where it's not as simple as just like taking her somewhere else or like removing Chris from the equation. She will not mate for life if she never sees Chris again.
So to the normal person, we would say, it sucks to be this one crane. I'm not doing it, but this guy's a zookeeper. So this is what he does. He protects the animals, and he knows that him alone is helping this endangered species
live.
And so this
With
is
great
kind
power comes great responsibility.
This is his calling.
This is his calling in a way. So just to do the math on it, there's a more than likely chance that for the next 25 years, Walnut will still be alive and still be trying to reproduce. Chris was 42 at the time of this, which means Chris will be into his 70s by the time he will still be doing mating dances by the time he's 65.
What happens as Chris gets older and the mating dance just doesn't do it for Walnut anymore?
I think that's a responsibility that Chris is willing to handle at this point. I think he's not going to give in.
He's got to keep his game up.
I think he's
I mean, could you imagine when the crane is just like, no, you don't excite me anymore?
That would be fascinating.
Would that be devastating? Would he be crushed by this? Or would he be... Is that a fireable offense? Does he go home to his real world family and say, I just lost my job because I don't arouse the crane anymore?
So here was the original story in the Washington Post. So Walnut starts responding to Crow's overtures. She returns his bows and then turns away from him and holds her wings loosely away from her body. Kneeling behind the bird, Crow rests a hand gently on her back. Then he starts rubbing her thighs rhythmically, almost pornographically. 30 seconds elapse. It feels much longer for Chris before Walnut steps away.
Listen, it feels longer for me, and I'm just listening to you read it.
Before Walnut steps away from Crow, fixes a few out-of-place feathers, and then stretches out her wings, asking for another go-around. So that is the task in which Chris has to perform. And then, after a certain point, they basically swap Chris out and artificially inseminate her now that she is revved up.
Rhythmically rubbing the crane's thighs. Is that what it says?
Yep.
So every failed relationship you've been in, it's because you were not good enough at the rhythmic rubbing of her thighs.
Crow and Walnut go through the motions all summer long, 5 days a week, sometimes several times a day. Chris Crow's exact quote was, "It's not exactly fun for me."
That is priceless.
It's pretty great.
This is a curse. This guy should go out and commit some heinous crime so he's incarcerated and doesn't have to.
So if you get the chance, look up the story about Chris, Crow, and Walnut. It's funny, fascinating. There's a lot of elements to it.
And that's why I said at the beginning, it's a great story for everyone but one person. And for that guy, this story sucks.
Speaking of stories that suck, Brian Laundrie, they're still searching for him. The newest information from today, Chris Laundrie, Brian Laundrie's father, has agreed to join the search for his son. And that sentence, I almost can't say that sentence with a straight face, because as you and I have discussed, if your son is missing, the idea that it would take you weeks to decide to join the search party to find your son, it's a very bizarre situation.
It is incredibly bizarre. I mean, just imagine, this is one of the fears of parenthood. People always, I shouldn't say always, but people look at the good things and they're, whether it's just about your kids or about, we deal with it in sports all the time where people are like, I want my kid to play. I want my kid to be the star. I want my kid to do this. And yeah, you want your kid to be the starting pitcher until he goes out and pitches and doesn't get anybody out. And then, like you said, with great responsibility with great pressure becomes great success or great failure. And people don't look at that. People think about, like, if you have kids, you'll grow up and you'll love them and everything will be great. And what if this is one of your kids? And a lot of these people go astray because of bad parenting, but there's a lot of good parents that have people that just go off the rails. And, people have said to me, like, oh, are you lucky that you had a brother who's a professional athlete? And I'm like, I'm lucky that I had the brother I had, who, if my brother was Ray Caruth, who's killing people and hiding it, when you get all this, it's a scary time. So as a parent myself, I'm imagining these parents, and part of you hopes your kid's dead, because assuming that you think that, like, I think my kid killed this girl, and if they find him alive, he's going to live in prison for. It would be a bizarre. I feel so bad for his parents, assuming that they're decent people and we're decent parents.
It's certainly conflicting. For me, the biggest challenge would just be, unless the authorities themselves are telling you to sit tight, right? Like if the authorities are saying we've got this, sit tight, it's actually safer if you don't leave the house. I understand those aspects of it. The aspect that I struggle with is that if the authorities are not saying that to you, the idea that we're 2 weeks into this, 3 weeks into this, how far along are we?
It was early. Well, he got home on like September 1st.
Yeah, but he was missing the week
missing
after.
the middle of
2 weeks
September,
after.
something like that.
So the fact that we're now 2 weeks, 3 weeks into this, like, I can't imagine sitting on the couch.
Well,
I can't imagine not being a part of the search party or not going out and looking. That part is befuddling to me if you're not being told by the authorities to stay put.
Of course, we know as much as everybody else, except for Dog. Dog knows more than we do.
Dog knows way more.
I mean, I don't think the family knows where he is, but I think they know when he left, like what direction he was going.
Sure.
So
I don't doubt that.
I think they gave him a pocket full of cash and sent him. And I think, like I said, I don't think they necessarily know where he is now, but I think they have a clue.
I mean, we should say we're 100% speculating right now. I just watching some of the coverage yesterday and reading about it this morning. I can't imagine he's still in that park.
No, I don't think he's ever been in that park.
You don't think so?
No.
You think they said he went into the park?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. I think he originally went into the park, but I think at this point now, cut your hair, shave your head, do whatever, you know what I mean, dye your hair, whatever you have to do, leave the park. But I don't know. Like, it's interesting. I just can't imagine that he's been in the same spot for the last 3 weeks.
Well, and here's the world too, where I know the world's different geographically or regionally, but like you look where we are, there are so many jobs. You get an able-bodied 23-year-old guy to show up and he's like, I'm ready to work. Can I see your ID? I don't have, and then he's like, listen, I can't find it. This is my name. And I don't know how they go around it. I don't know I don't know how far you get in, but depending on what you're doing, there's lots of jobs you could work under the table. There's lots of jobs that you could do this. If he wanted to show up somewhere with a fake name and get some job and stash some cash, I think he could do it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. The other thing too, like sometimes if you're in the right place, you don't even need the job. Like there are places that he could go to seek refuge, or also too just to get a bite, like whatever. Like,
right.
Now could you do that for years? Probably not, but for the first 3-4 weeks, you could certainly pull it off. So it'll be interesting. The Chris Laundrie thing I would love to know if the authorities told them to sit tight for 2 to 3 weeks, or if he's finally helping.
My initial thought, and this isn't even being devil's advocate, this is me trying to think, as you mentioned, like, would the authorities say to stay away? Immediately, if he was out in the search party, he would be such a distraction and probably be so grilled by everyone, the media, the hounding, like trying to get quotes from him. And as media people come, like we see press conferences, but if you've ever been around somewhere where, like a locker room, the media just comes up to these people whenever. So if, WNEP shows up and they're like, oh, and then WBRE shows up and then Fox shows up and just throughout the day, and then North Central PA comes up. This guy could be getting grilled constantly, and it would be such a distraction. And then, of course, you get the people who just want to harass him and be like, your kid's a killer. Where is he? You know where he is.
Sure.
I think it could have made the search a circus.
Yeah.
And they probably, so I could see why the authorities said you will do a lot more harm to our search than good.
Somebody asked the question, and I actually think it's a fair question. If Chris Laundrie finds his son, does he get reward money? And I find that aspect fascinating because if you offered Chris Laundrie, like what you're telling me is you think they said cash, go live, everything else. So here's the funny part is how much would you have to, if that's the truth, like if that happened to be true, right? If the circumstance was Chris Laundrie was helping his son, what would be the dollar figure? What would be the reward money amount for Chris Laundrie to look at the situation and be like, I can help you find Brian?
I don't think then. That's a very interesting question. Would they be, I'm trying to think of what their words would be of helping a fugitive if they knew, because when he first left, he wasn't a fugitive because he was just a person of interest.
Sure.
Then he's a whole fugitive because of this banking thing that he used her credit card or her debit card when she was dead. That's an interesting question too.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. The whole aspect is, and again, his sister came out the other day. That's why I think there's a chance that these people were normal, decent people, because the sister has kids.
What are you going to say if you're his sister? You have to say, I'm not saying the sister was ingenuous. I'm just simply saying that if you're his sister, what are you going to say on national media?
But she doesn't have to say anything. And that's the point. Like, she's like, yeah, I'll talk.
Yeah.
Because the family hasn't.
Sure.
She's the only one in the family who's like, yeah, give me a microphone. I'll say what I got to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know.
Kyrie Irving has been informed he will not be able to play at home games if he is unvaccinated.
Is he still in net?
He's still in net. He's a Brooklyn Net. For those of you who don't know, the Brooklyn Nets they're probably the most talented team in the league. So they have a chance. They are trying to win a championship. The NBA has informed him he will not be able to play at home games. He also, when he travels to Toronto, he is not allowed to leave the hotel. He's not allowed to leave the gym or the hotel while he is in Toronto. Like, he's not allowed to leave his room.
Because it's in Canada.
Because it's in Canada, and he will be fined and arrested if he leaves the hotel room or the gymnasium. And then you get into there are other away games where the states have very similar policies to New York. The one thing that I read, they said they would estimate that he would miss over 60% of the Brooklyn Nets basketball games if he is unvaccinated. It is a very interesting subplot to everything else that's going on.
Huh. I mean, it's just a lot to think of up front because your immediate thought is financially, so he loses 60% of his salary. He makes so much money, doesn't matter. But from a team standpoint, you kind of have to find another body for those 60% of the games, and it's a very disjointed way to run any business.
Well, the other issue you run into, and this is me, I'm not speculating, but I'm just trying to piece it together. I didn't actually read a report on this. Depending on who they play in the playoffs, he might not be able to play X amount of games in the playoffs. So, for example, if the Nets play a vaccine, what's the word I'm looking for? A vaccine-friendly state.
Okay.
I don't even know the word I would be looking for. An unvaccinated friendly state.
Well, if they play the Knicks in the playoffs, he couldn't play.
He couldn't play. If they played the Lakers in the NBA Finals, he wouldn't be able to play.
Okay.
So there's these playoff scenarios that he wouldn't even be able to participate, regardless of if the game was home or away.
And this is something that we agree. Like, we're both vaccinated. We're both pro-vaccine, but I'm not sure this is fair, right? American?
I'm not sure how to think of it, only because we can go down the vaccine rabbit hole. I'd rather not today. What I will say is, from Kyrie Irving's standpoint, Kyrie Irving, for those of you who don't know Kyrie Irving, he is a different person.
He's a weird dude.
And I say different, and there are things that make him great as a basketball player and even as a human being. He does some phenomenal. If you look up like the things he does for communities and work with kids and stuff, he does more than the average superstar, for sure, without a doubt.
Well, he's a Duke guy.
Yeah, well, Duke he was there for 2 games.
No.
Yes. He played 2 games.
And
for
then
the
he got
Duke Blue
hurt?
Devils. Yes. Anyway, on the
Well,
flip
he's still,
side of it.
once a Duke guy, always a Duke guy.
On the
he
flip
was
side
also
of
Uncle
Drew.
He was Uncle Drew
in the movies. On the flip side of it, he does some things that are he is out in the open as he believes the earth is flat. He is anti-vaccine. He has come out, he has said a lot of things like against education and science that have been factually proven over and over and over again. It is fair to say at this point that Kyrie Irving is a conspiracy theorist. I'm not going to sit here and say he's a bad person, but there are things that he says that just are not true, and he believes in the conspiracy. Whether or not a vaccine is one of those, that's up for debate. But what makes this challenging is this is not somebody who walks this is not someone who walks a straight line and it is always done right by his teammates and by his organization. He has caused them year after year and after year turmoil of whether or not they can trust him and rely on him. And then you add this now on top of it, and it's almost just kind of like the tipping of just everything that's been building up to this point.
Whenever you want to impress people with your intellect, start with the earth is flat.
That's Kyrie Irving believes the earth is flat.
And you have won over the room, right? They are listening to you.
Yes. He's a hard person to talk about because in the same breath, he has done so much for that community in Brooklyn. It's absurd. Like the amount of time and money he's put into those communities and neighborhoods, it's almost uncomparable to other people. So how do you balance somebody that does so much good, but then the reason he's able to do so much good is he makes a ton of money playing basketball. An absurd amount of money.
Yes.
And it allows him to donate and give his time to those things. But on the flip side of that, his responsibility as a basketball player, he holds no credence to it. He leaves the team without telling them. He skips practices. He skips games. And now he might not even be able to play 60% of their schedule and miss entire playoff series. So there's this juxtaposition where he doesn't realize, hey, by the way, the thing that allows you to be this great person who gives his time and money, you're not holding up your end of that deal. Like you're not doing the things because otherwise you're going to, now at this point, he's made so much money through sneakers and playing basketball, it might not matter. But I honestly don't think he realizes he's about to lose all of that because he's not taking care of it. He's not taking it serious enough to keep doing the other things.
You know where else he could lose all of it?
Where?
If he went out on a boat and got to the edge of this flat and just fell.
And fell off.
Like, that's my question for him. And I understand the whole, like the earth is round. It doesn't seem like, as we sit here, it doesn't seem round and gravity and all that stuff. But if the earth is flat, then there has to be an end.
You're really stuck on this flat earth.
What I want to hear what an intelligent Kyrie Irving says to me of what happens at the end. Is there a railing?
Well,
does water just spew off?
So there's different theories. Some people believe it's almost like a bubble. Like some people believe it's almost like capped off because otherwise the water would fall off. So there has to be something holding it, whether it's a bubble, whether it's gravity, but something is holding everything in place.
Okay.
Like almost like centripetal force.
But so isn't there still an edge though?
Listen, I am not a flat earther. I'm just simply telling you what those people would tell you. Like that is one of the arguments that they would make to you.
I guess.
It's pretty fascinating. Elon Musk is back at it again, just really quickly. He started Starlink. Starting today, you can order your router to get your Wi-Fi through Starlink. It is a series of satellites delivering Wi-Fi with no ground connection, nothing like that. So the router just needs to be plugged in with electric, but the actual connection itself, there is no actual cord. It's almost like a cable TV dish that you put up on the corner of your. So it would be the same concept, except you're getting Wi-Fi. What makes it so great is the satellites that he's putting into space are 60 times closer than the satellites that you currently use for internet or for your cable TV if you use a dish satellite for that stuff. So it makes it faster, less lag time, all of those things. He does some funky things. I am always amazed at how quickly he pulls some of this stuff off.
Is it so low that planes are going to be dodging these?
I would imagine that would be against regulation, so I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I'm going to say no, that planes will not be dodging the satellites. Because with the satellite, there needs to be enough force that it's going around the planet. So you can't, that it's staying within the circumference of the planet, because the satellite itself isn't actually going around the planet. The planet is spinning.
Correct.
But it's the idea of, if you have it too low, gravity takes hold and pulls it back down. So it has to be high enough away that gravity isn't bringing it back.
What's going to be super interesting about this, not from a business standpoint, but you get to these rural, desolate places where there's no signal.
Yes.
Because they don't have towers there, because there aren't enough people there. So why would they have a signal there?
Correct.
But if everything's coming from up above, then it doesn't really matter. The satellite does not discriminate between populated area, less populated area.
Correct.
So your phone should be able to work everywhere, theoretically.
Yes.
That would be, and again, one of the things that you'd mentioned before, I don't know if you mentioned it now, was because it's lower, it's more efficient. The speed's faster, everything's better. So he's a smart dude. There's no doubt about it.
I looked down at my phone and he released it this morning, like no announcement, no nothing. It was just like, here it is. If you want to sign up for it, put your email in and we'll send you the router. And it was like done. His ability to just release products and like it looks clean, it looks professional. And he even says in the thing, he's like, listen, like there's going to be days where it's out. There's going to be like, we're going to chip away at this and make it better and better and better. But if you want to be a part of what we're doing, join us. And that is an aspect. There's so many companies that they will not release the product, or they won't let you be a part of something until they feel it's the best or it's what they want it to be. And Musk a lot of times is kind of like, hey, we think this would be cool. Like, come be a part of it. Like, it's not going to be perfect right now, but like, we're going to get there and you can be a part of it with us. And he's really smart about that. Very, very intelligent about
now, just a rewind to yesterday. He was not good on the philanthropic list, was he?
He was not.
He was a 1?
But this is the funny part about Musk. Some of this stuff, almost in a weird way, is like he's profiting, don't get me wrong, but providing internet to rural Americans that have never had good internet, I mean, doesn't that bump them up 0.1, 0.2? Like, it has to raise your score.
It is. It's a way of making money that has
like even the things, even his electric cars, like good for the environment. Like I don't know.
But you talk about the battery mining, they make it sound like it's bad.
You know who talks about that? Old people who have oil dividends. That's who says that. Last thing, I don't even know if you care about this. Game of Thrones prequel trailer release called House of Dragons. I am pumped. You have not watched Game of Thrones. You need to.
You know what else I'm not going to watch?
What?
House of Dragons.
If you watched Game of Thrones, you would love it.
You think?
As a story, as a novelist, as a storyteller, as someone who likes narrative, Game of Thrones is top of the line. It is that good. There just happens to be dragons.
There are lots of dragons and naked people.
Yes.
That's Game of Thrones.
Yes. But the books and what real people will tell you is the dialogue, the quotes, the narrative, the connections. There are things within the story that very few television shows have pulled off before. And Game of Thrones does that. It is incredible.
You know, that's what I've heard.
Yep.
And I will just have to take your word for it.
The crazy part, the first season, I'm going to say the first and second season, I mean, they're 20 hours because it's an hour an episode, 10 and 10. I mean, out of 20 hours, dragons and like fantasy make up an hour of it. I mean, the other 19 hours is like, it's relationships, it's dialogue, it's drama. It's just in this sci-fi setting, and the other hour is dragons and like demons and stuff.
I guess.
So that's the other part too. Now, as the show gets further and further in and you get these huge action sequences, obviously the sci-fi and that kind of stuff comes into play more and more. But early on in the show, like it was not, you can watch almost the entire first season and there is very little like magic sci-fi that makes up 1/10 of it in the first season.
So I've got dragons and naked people. Are the dragons naked too? How does that work?
Dragons are naturally naked.
Natural, okay.
Yes.
See, I'm not aware.
Surprised you didn't know
I
that.
haven't dealt with a lot of dragons.
I'm surprised that you didn't know that.
So I did not.
This is a little bit, I don't think you're being negative, but you're kind of showing like your unwillingness to just go full nerd, which like nerd's where it's at. You need to dive in a little bit.
Like there are aspects I liked Stranger Things.
Yep.
That kind of had a little Halloween aspect to it.
It did. I enjoyed Stranger Things.
I liked Harry Potter.
Okay.
I didn't read the books. I watched the movies.
See, you're just being stubborn with game. You're just being curmudgeon-y, and you're just like, I'm not watching it. Everyone's watching it. I'm not watching it. You would love it. You would love Game of Thrones.
Would I?
Yes.
Would
Yes,
I?
you would.
And I do get your point because you're like, oh, because my first thing is they're a freaking dragon.
I know that's your problem.
But people's like, well, okay, so there's wizards in Harry Potter, and you're good with that. But it I don't know.
You're missing out.
You're not the first person who's told me this.
Yes, you are. You're missing out. So the new trailer's up. If you want to go see it, House of Dragons. It's a prequel, and it's basically going back to like the original Targaryens when they.
The original who?
The Targaryens.
The Targaryens.
Yes.
They sound like bad people.
They kind of are.
See, I already know what happened. The Targaryens are the bad guys.
That's the well. This is so the neat thing about this, and I won't ramble. This prequel, there's not really. If you've read the books and you've dove into this Game of Thrones culture, there's a big question with the show. Like, is there even going to be a good guy? Like, is there going to be a hero? Is there like a savior?
Have you read all the books too?
I have not read all the books.
Have you read some of the books?
I have done a ton of what I really enjoy is if you go on YouTube, they have like these 20 to 30 minute videos where they pick a different, they call them houses, right? But basically, essentially families. They pick different houses, they pick different subjects, different lands, different creatures, different things. And they break down like from start to finish where they are at in the books, how they got to there and what they mean. And those videos are fat. If you've watched the show, the videos are awesome because it's like getting the full scope of the world without having to read 500 pages of it. This is the thing about Game of Thrones books. Do you know anybody who has read them before I say this?
I hope not.
No, I don't know. Everyone tells me the same thing who's read them. They're fantastic, but they are dense. Like it is not light reading. And so that has I've always stayed away from them because I don't want, they're time consuming and I don't want to spend that much time getting into something I feel like I have a good grasp on.
Right.
So I do think I'm missing out not reading them, but these are people that love Game of Thrones. Like these aren't like halfway people, like people who love it. They're like, boy, it's dense. Like it's not easy to read. They're like, it's a chore.
So you say I'm missing out on Game of Thrones. You know what you're missing out on?
What?
The baseball playoffs.
I'm not missing out. I'm actually going to join in now because of the Braves.
Do you know, this is one of each sport has its own things, and I love football, I love basketball, I love baseball, I love, the thing about baseball that makes it different with the batting order, that the guy, last night the Dodgers won. Mm-hmm. It was 1-1 till the ninth inning, and a guy hit a 2-run homer with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth to win.
Okay.
That guy was out of the starting lineup because he was 8 for his last 72.
Okay.
So he is frostbite cold at the plate. But because of double switches and because of pinch hitter and whatever, he gets in the game. I think it was his second at bat of the game. I think he'd batted earlier. Okay. But he's a guy who's been around. He's a guy who started for him. He's kind of lost his starting job because right now he can't hit anything. Yeah. And in no other sport does in the NFL, there's not some sixth wide receiver who's dropped every pass for the last 3 weeks, who's catching the game-winning touchdown on the last play. There's not the 13th guy off the bench who's coming in on the last play of the game to shoot the buzzer beater. But in baseball, it creates these, LeBron can't get the last at bat.
Sure.
And in basketball, he can shoot every time in the whole fourth quarter. In baseball, so you get these aspects. It doesn't always help the drama, but it creates. Baseball has the most unlikely heroes of any sport.
Which is awesome after it happens. I would argue during and before it's a negative, because if you said, like, this is a bad example, but if you said to me, do I want to see the Angels' ninth hitter or do I want to see Ohtani with 2 outs?
I get it.
Everybody and their mom saying Ohtani. And in baseball, to your point, you don't get to pick. So beforehand, it's not that great. And even during, it's still not as great. Now, if the ninth hitter for the Angels comes through, it's amazing. So it's only cool when it's successful. If the dude strikes out, everybody's like, I much rather would have watched Ohtani try to do that.
But there's a build-up to it. It almost has the hockey, soccer drama of it.
Yeah,
of
after
when they score.
After. Something has to happen. That's the point I'm making to you.
Correct.
It's only cool when something happens. And the point that I'm making to you is if it's LeBron taking the last shot or Peyton throwing the last pass or Ohtani always getting the last at bat, now it's cool before, during, and after, regardless of what the outcome was. If Ohtani strikes out, it's still fantastic. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he struck out Ohtani. Like, so I disagree. I think it's actually baseball's biggest flaw is what you're describing.
Oh, no, I disagree with that.
That's fine.
And I get I get what you're saying. Yeah. But again, it's like you watch the NHL All-Star game and the final score is 13-10. It's not great. It's worse. Because when you watch a hockey game and someone scores.
Did you just use the NHL All-Star game as an analogy?
But yes, because sometimes less is more.
Okay.
And that's why if a World Cup soccer game was 7-5, nobody, they scored again. It's because the goals are so monumental.
I can't tie your analogy back to what we were just, I don't understand how a 13
because
to 10
the moment,
All-Star
because you only get, there's only like this chance
so
I'd rather see
moment. Right. So I'd rather see Ohtani in that moment than the ninth hitter for the Angels because we don't get to decide.
But Ohtani, if you could change it, he would bat first in the ninth. He would bat second in the ninth. He would bat third in the ninth.
On this one, I am right, and you are
keep
right.
telling yourself that. The Dodger fans don't think so.
I have something I've been waiting to say because I actually want to compliment baseball. The best thing that the Major League Baseball, what's the word I'm looking for? The best thing that
MLB
that the league is doing is that they are not stacking their playoff games, which is ingenious. So like the first game today is at like 3:30, 4.
Yeah.
And then the second game is at 7:38. And there have been years in the past where they did not stack. They literally stacked them.
No, they haven't done that in a long time. It's been a long time.
The first game would start before, the second game would start before the first game was over. They have done that for years.
Well, like tomorrow, there will be 4 games.
Let me look it up.
Today, there's only 2. But tomorrow, there will be 4. And they will have like probably a 12:30.
So tomorrow, there's a 2 o'clock, there's a 4:30, there's a 7, there's a 9:30. So those
that's
games,
pretty spread.
Their games are essentially, and that is the smartest thing the MLB has done in a long time.
They do it a long time.
Not like that.
They've done it a long time.
Not like that.
Look it up.
Not like that.
They have never. It's like the NFL playoffs. It's like the NBA playoffs. They do not start. They don't have 2 7 o'clock starts.
Yes, but then in the NBA and the NFL and what the MLB used to do, if you had a 7 o'clock game, you'd start the next one at 8:30. Yes, you would, and it would bleed into the second game.
Nope.
And the MLB now, it looks like the MLB is like not doing that.
You're wrong.
I'm not.
You're wrong.
All right. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. We have one more. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Actually, we'll read this because if it helps you, I'll feel better. What's cool is the drama that leads up to seeing if the cold guy can come up big. If the star like Ohtani gets a hit, then it's of course he did. Mark is right. You old people.
Why don't we just take all that he just said?
I don't understand you old people.
Why don't we just take all what he said and we'll take out the part Mark is right and we'll put that on the wall behind you with your 2 A-list people?
You guys are crazy because if the cold guy strikes out, no one cares. No one cares if the cold guy strikes out.
But if the cold guy strikes out, it goes to the 10th inning because it's tied.
All right, and but if they're down 1, like you're using the scenario,
but that's still,
if they're down 1 and the cold guy strikes out, everyone's like, well, of course he struck out. He's the cold guy. He's the nice guy on the bench. It's the same concept.
As a literary person,
used the same argument as you and Joe to prove that it's the same thing, if not better though, because now if he strikes out, it's Ohtani, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he struck out Ohtani. No one's like, oh my gosh, he struck out the 9th hitter. No one's doing that. Nobody is doing that.
Can I speak now?
I just let you talk. We just did
like...
a 60-minute show. If we had a chess timer, and a 60-minute show, if we had a chess timer, yours would be like 45 to 15.
We should do that.
And you go,
like,
can I talk now?
You talk.
Yeah.
So, but here in literary, in storytelling, what is one of the unlikely
but in
hero?
Storytelling, you're writing the narrative. So thus, you get to you basically get to make sure the underdog is successful because it's your story. And so what I'm saying to you is that if you and I are writing a story and it's an underdog story, we can put the underdog in that situation because you and I can guarantee that the underdog will be successful in whatever way we think success works for our story. What I'm saying to you is that in sports, especially in baseball, that is not the case. Just because I send the 9th batter up doesn't mean he's going to be successful or something cool is going to happen. As a sports fan, I have to wait for the 9th batter to be successful in order for it to be cool. And what I am saying to you is that if in baseball, you could send up, if in the 9th inning, you could reset your card so you could put your best batters to go up to bat, that would be significantly more dramatic, significantly cooler than always having to rely on just staying with the order and ending up with the 8th best hitter going up to bat in the most crucial moment.
I disagree.
It is. It's the truth.
I disagree.
It's 100% true.
I disagree.
There's no. Okay,
that's what.
There's not a single
100% your opinion.
There's not because there's not a basketball fan or a football fan that sits around and goes, "Hey, I think baseball's got this thing right. How about every time you have to shoot an order?" And so that way, if it's at the end of the game and the 12th player for the Los Angeles Lakers has to take the shot, boy, that would be cool. No one's saying that. No one that's a football fan is like, what if you had to rotate the receivers so your 8th receiver had to be on the field the last play? Boy, that would be cool. No one says that. No one. A basketball fan or a football fan wants LeBron to take the last shot. They want Tom Brady to throw the last pass. Nobody wants the 9th batter in baseball unless after the 30th time they're successful and everyone goes, wow, that's cool. This 9th batter, he's not even that good. And he came in and he hit well, yeah, you had to wait 30 at-bats for that to happen because most of the time they're not successful. That's not cool. There's nothing cool about it.
But you have your 9th batters too, and you've had to work through the order, and it depends how many guys have gotten on base and where we get in the order, because if the rest of the order would have done better, then we wouldn't be at the 9th batter. We'd be at the 3rd batter. We worked our way through. So it's that's kind of the natural flow of the game.
And I have no issue with that. Just don't tell me it's cool or better that way. It's not.
It is better that way.
It's not better that way. I think the natural flow of it is fine. I don't want baseball to change. Just don't sell it to me like, what's cool is when the 8th hitter gets stuck in the most pivotal point of the game. No, what's cool is when Ohtani gets stuck in the most pivotal point of the game. What's cool is watching your best batter have to try to figure out or save the game. That's way cooler than watching some poor guy having to go up to the plate cold and save the team.
But see, one of the things that's different about baseball is you can't have or I shouldn't say you can't. Like Max Scherzer is the best pitcher in the National League right now. Max Scherzer may be the best pitcher in baseball, but he only goes so far. So the best pitcher, because of the human limitations of baseball pitchers, the best pitcher in the world started for the Dodgers, but in the 9th inning when the game's on the line, he's out.
Yes.
And it adds to the team aspect of we can't just do it with one guy. And if you're a baseball fan, you get that.
Yes, and that part is fine. Just don't tell me it's cooler. Don't tell me it's better, because it's not.
There's something it is, and I understand your point of the drama build up to it. Because you certainly expect less from Chris Taylor than you do from Ohtani.
Right.
But when it is cool when there is a walk-off home run in a playoff game with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th, no matter who hits it. But
the question is what's better. The question is what would be better. And so if you and I are sitting down in front of the TV,
there's nothing
in the scenario
better.
There is, because the scenario that you just described, who's going up to bat? And all I'm saying is that in the majority of other sports, you get to pick who is in that moment.
Correct.
And in baseball, leading up to that, if you and I, if we could pause time and we could say, who do you want to see go up to bat right now? Neither of us would say whoever the 7th guy in the order is. both of us would look.
Depends who you're rooting for. If you're rooting for the Cardinals, you want that's exactly, and you've worked your way to the bottom of the order.
That's a dumb point to your argument because you
know
no,
it's not.
We're not talking about it from the perspective of we hope our team wins. We are simply talking about it from you're trying to explain to me that it is cooler that baseball has these sporadic moments because you can't dictate the order. I'm saying I'm fine with there being a batting order. I have no issue with it. Don't just tell me it's cooler though, because like once every millennia, some random guy jacks a home run and saves the team.
Not true.
It's not.
All I'm saying, my point that returns is baseball, because of the way it's laid out, is the only sport essentially that allows you the unlikely hero.
That's fine. And what I'm saying to you is that's only exciting when the word hero gets to be attached to it. Because if they walk up there and strike out, they're not a hero. So the majority of the time, the scenario that you keep laying out, the majority of the time, there is no excitement because you're not excited when they go up to the plate as you would be if it was somebody else. You're not as excited as they're at the plate if it was somebody else. And then if they strike out, you're certainly not as excited about it if it were somebody bigger and better. Well, the only scenario in which yours makes sense is when they are successful, when they are an unlikely hero. And how often does that actually happen?
Hold on. First of all, everyone is excited because there was a guy on second and all this guy needs to do is get a single. And as much as it's like, well, he's cold and he's this and he's that, a single and the winner goes on, the loser goes home. But because of the setup and because of where it was, that it's an elimination game.
So here's the last question.
It is incredibly exciting regardless of who's up.
Yes, I agree. So what would make it better? Simple answer. What would make it better? Having the most exciting player at the plate. And in baseball, you don't get to dictate that. And all I'm saying is there's a minor flaw in the system when you don't get to actually see that. Because in basketball, I never worry about that. In football, when the ball is snapped, whoever the starting quarterback is, whoever your stud quarterback is, that is who is throwing the football. In baseball, you don't get to decide that. And while you try to play it off as it creates these great dramatic scenes, my argument to you would be those dramatic scenes are very few and far between, and it actually would be more exciting if you got to decide who went up to the plate. That's all I'm saying.
And I get that. But my statement is not that it makes great dramatic scenes. My statement is it makes the opportunity for the unlikely hero.
Okay.
So Chris Taylor's the 13th best hitter on the Dodgers right now.
Okay.
There is never, ever, ever, as much as this doesn't happen often in baseball, as much as they usually fail in baseball, it was 1-1 till the ninth. Most people don't score.
So
hold on. As much as it rarely happens in baseball, it never, ever, 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 ever will happen in an NBA playoff game.
Fine.
That
and
the
you know why I'm okay
best
with that?
player hits a game winner.
Because that's what I wanted to say. And you know why I'm okay with that? Because the idea that to play 150, 60 games,
62,
to play 162 games, and then you decide you're going to have it decided by the 13th batter, congratulations. Enjoy your sport.
But it was only decided by that.
Enjoy your sport.
Because
162 games to have your season decided by Chris Taylor. You keep baseball. I'm done with it. Thank you for watching the Midday Show. Thank you to all of our sponsors. And be sure to go to NorthcentralPA.com.
Next time I will talk to the wall behind him. I try. What can I do?
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We will see you tomorrow.
Later. How do we